and then 10 minutes goes by and you've still not made the right decision. So I'm a huge believer of preparing for these things, going through what can happen, but knowing that things will happen outside of my control. You can't do anything about it. When it happens, deal with it. And then, you're, like you said, you're just removing all of that stress. You know that something is going to happen. Sort of the uncontrollable almost becomes the controllable because you know it's going to happen. You know you're going to have a bad patch. You know something's not going to go to plan. And the ability to be like, right, well, when that happens, like, that's exciting.
Yeah, because you've anticipated it.
Precisely.
Yeah. And linking that to things like nerves as well. A lot of people who we coach say, oh, I get nervous and that I get, really bothered by that and that affects my race. And I think it's easy for people to forget that even at the top end of the sport, the level you're competing at, we get nervous. You get nervous. Everybody gets nervous. Everybody has bad patches. Everybody's the same, but it's how you deal with those. And the more practice and preparation you put into that, the better you will deal with it.
Exactly. And I know we'll come on to talk about my race schedule for the year, but if I was racing ultras in a year, I'd race 3, maybe 4 times in a year. So that's 3 or 4 times to practice going through this. Whereas this year, I think I've raced 5 times already, which is unheard of for me. And I've got to be able to practice that going into everything. And I think just touching on nerves, you break it down. It's why am I nervous for this? Is it because I'm afraid that I'm not going to succeed? And if that is the case, well, then you sit down with your coach 6 months before the race. If this happens at every race, you sit down and it's like, right, well, what do we need to do in order for me to be still on the start line, confident in that I'm able to achieve what I want to achieve?
Yeah.
And I think that's why people are most nervous, because they're worried about failing. What is failure? It's a race at the end of the day. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, because if things go really, really well, that's brilliant. You've achieved what you set out to achieve. Brilliant. You're then going to get to Monday and you go back to work, or you're with your family, or you go to the supermarket. No one knows whether you failed or you've succeeded. It's all in your mind. And for me, it's like, did I learn something from this? And did it make me a better athlete, a better person, a better husband, whatever? If that's in the whole process, if that's a yes, then brilliant. And that's why, for me, sort of setting goals on one side is absolutely brilliant. But I think so many people set the wrong goals that end up becoming so unachievable. And actually, I do an exercise every year. In the first week of January, I write down what I want to achieve in that year on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and put it away.
Nice.
Then 12 months later, and there'll be some things that seem so mundane on it, but at the time they were really important. And then you realize that when you achieve one goal, you're never satisfied, because you then want to go. And then I think the easiest way is talking about sort of marathon PBs. As soon as if someone's goal is to run sub 2:30 and they run 2:28:30, brilliant, you've achieved your goal. Within 2 weeks, and you've been preparing that for, let's say, a year, within 2 weeks, you're thinking, right, how do I run sub 2:25? And you've forgotten that you ever ran outside of that. And you've been worrying for 6 months about this. You've achieved it. And then your goalposts then change straight away. And I think there's the saying of, like, don't let the wins go to your head or the losses go to your heart. It's just a race. Like, I had a nightmare at UTMB last year. Yes, I really wanted to do the double. I ended up not celebrating Western States at all, because I won that. And then I was like, oh, well, now I want to go and win UTMB in the same year. That was never the plan. Don't get greedy.
Yeah.
And it's so easy in hindsight to look back. And at the time, it was my biggest regret from last year, was not enjoying the win and setting the next huge lofty goal and then not being prepared.
But I think you made a good point earlier, and we talk a lot about it with the athletes we work with, is don't see it as a failure, see it as a learning. So you learn from that last year and you go into this year and you say, okay, well, I am going to celebrate those big wins because you said you learn from everything. And I think it's a really good point that everybody can take away, because you're right. And there's a couple of analogies here where you get that goal as you described, the 2:30 marathon. The most popular goals in the world of any running related discipline are round numbers: 3-hour marathon, 4-hour marathon, 90-minute half, breaking 2 hours for the first time for a half. But when people get there, they jump to the next round number. And I always say to people, well, there's a lot of numbers in between that, that you should be happy with. And I think Kipchoge said it best when he described it as, you should also be satisfied to sit on the branch for a while as well and back it up before you then make the next step to the next branch. And you keep climbing that tree. But so many people get to the branch and then they want to go up to another branch straight away.
There's only one way you can go. If you there are only a finite amount of branches.
Absolutely.
And you get to the end, and you see, and it's such a shame because you see so many people quitting whatever sport it is at such an early stage because the next branch seems so far away and so unachievable. Whereas actually take someone, talking about the marathon, take someone like Phil Sessman.
Yeah.
Who has just slowly improved in his marathon. And he's got to the 2:11:30 standard, which has now been blown out the water to 2:8:10 to qualify for the Olympics. And he's just slowly plugged away. And in 3-4 years ago, that would have seemed so unachievable, but just slowly plugging away. And you get there, you can get there eventually. And I think that's the best example of doing things that 3-4 years ago, you may not have thought were possible, but they don't happen overnight.
And I was with Phil at the weekend up in Leeds, and he did a Q&A. And one point that was really fascinating, and I want to share it with the audience, was Phil said he's pretty much improved his marathon PB by about 5 minutes, just inside of 5 minutes. Yeah. And as you've just rightly pointed out, he said, when you looked at that, some people might have thought that was unrealistic in the time frame that he's done it.